Number 9.
Texans. Only loss came on the road to the Vikings. They got housed, didn't have Joe Mixon. But their top 8 offense, top 5 defense, and I love C.J. Stroud. Joe Mixon's coming back. Listen, C.J. Stroud is a young quarterback. Did you see Caleb Williams this week when he got a run game with DeAndre Swift? Oh, Caleb looked pretty good. As good as C.J. Stroud is, and he's got his weapons like Nico Collins, young quarterbacks especially, they need their running backs. Joe Mixon returns. I like Houston 9.
Number 8.
Yeah, I mean, Houston Texans, I feel like you guys know I'm super high on the Texans, and that's why I'm also, before I actually really start to kind of break this down more, I'm curious, how do Houston Texans fans feel right now about how their season is unfolding? I know the expectations are through the roof, or at least preseason, they were through the roof. I mean, I was touting, C.J. Stroud as a top candidate to be the MVP and the Texans to be a top contender, not only in the AFC, but in the NFL. And I feel like as the weeks have gone by, you guys know that I'm trying to make as much Texans content as I can, but I don't see a lot from all around, whether it be, NFL Live, Get Up, First Take, First Things First, any of the shows. And so it feels like a lot of people, and we can even see in this, right? Colin has them ranked 9. We can see that a lot of people are talking more about the Bills, the Ravens, of course, the Chiefs. And I don't even mean just from a popularity standpoint, because I know Texans, just because maybe they're not as popular and don't have as much of as large of a fan base as, say, like the Cowboys, the Eagles, some of these other more popular teams. So I don't even mean it in that light, because I've talked about that in the past, but it just feels like a lot of people have become more lukewarm on the Houston Texans rather than being like, they're a serious threat. They are a force to be reckoned with. So I'm just curious what you all feel about that. Do you think that makes sense? Do you think it's understandable? Do you think it's absurd? Do you think people are sleeping on them? I would love to know your thoughts. I think the Texans are coming along nicely. I would have liked to have seen them be more high powered, but there's definitely some legitimate reasons, right? Like losing your starting running back as to why some of those things are, they definitely do need more out of the run game, without a doubt. 26 carries for 101 yards isn't awful, but then, you had C.J. Stroud, 40 pass attempts, but he threw for 345 yards and 2 touchdowns, which obviously when you compare that to Trevor, throwing for 169 yards, but yet it took a last-minute score to win the game 24-20. And I think that's where some of the disconnect is, for me at least. And again, Texans fans, don't take this as me saying, that your team is not good. It's just, I would have loved to have seen a more convincing, dominant win over the Jags. I understand not every win can be like that, but it seems like lots of teams were able to do that to the Jags, and I just would have loved to have been able to see that out of the Texans. I think, as always, Stroud just looks really comfortable. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm learning throughout this season, because I keep seeing so many quarterbacks ebb and flow with their levels of comfortability, right? Sometimes it looks like they are just so calm, cool, and collected, no matter what, even if they're being blitzed and attacked from all angles, right? Even if they're throwing interceptions, fumbles, wherever, it's like they look so calm, cool, and collected. And then the next game, it's like they look frazzled and lost, and you're just like, wait a second, what? Just last week you threw 2 interceptions, and yet you still looked calm, cool, and collected. Now you're throwing no interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and yet you look like you're lost out there. Like, where's, what's going on here? And that's what's so cool about C.J. Stroud, is it just feels to me, no matter what's going on in the game, whether he's up by 100 or down by 100, it's just like, he's good. And that's so awesome. I mean, like, that's that. And there's a difference too, because sometimes you have quarterbacks that always look one note, even when things are failing. And it's like, it just feels like they're emotionless, right? And it's not like, it's on one side, it's kind of a good thing because they're more even keeled, but it's also kind of like, I need to see more out of you. CJ Stroud is so comfortable, but it's not done in a way that makes you feel like, are you even here for the game, man? Like, do you even care? Like, what are you thinking right now, right? Like, there's a difference, and that's something that the more I watch Stroud is something that like really resonates with me personally more than anything. In a lot of ways, it was the type of athlete that I wish I was, but I was too immature for that. They need I think when they can get the run game right, and they can rely on that more, I think that'll continue to open up the pass game. And I think it's always kind of going to be it's going to be better for the Texans when they can approach these games from a more balanced offensive standpoint, right? I think when you can really open up the field, because CJ Stroud's the type of person where if you give him a slight advantage, think of it like this, like with blackjack, right? When you back in the days when you could count cards, it wasn't so much that you knew exactly what card was going to come up next and that's how you were going to win your money. It was just that you had the ability to kind of know with a little bit higher degree of certainty what cards are going to come up. So you're just putting yourself in you're putting yourself in a position to be more successful more often than not. And maybe a better way of looking at this is like how the house, right? Like in terms of a casino, they really will only have, in a lot of their games, they'll only have like a 1 to 2% advantage over the regular average Joe person. And that is enough for them to make hundreds of millions of dollars, just endless amounts of money. And to me, that is what it is with CJ Stroud. You give him the slightest little bit of an advantage, right? You just give him that 1-2% advantage. Boom. It's just done, right? It's just, there we go. We're going to the top, right? And at this point in his career, right? Because in a way, that's kind of what Colin was. I don't want to say that's what Colin was saying, but I think that's what part of what Colin is saying in terms of like this is a young quarterback, and so at this point in CJ Stroud's career, he's not going to be able to just carry the load of everyone, right? He can for some games, he can for some halves, and he can for some moments, but he just can't just do it nonstop, right? Start to finish, week in and week out. And it's not to say that he only can do it with great talent. It's just he's the type of quarterback right now where if you just can give him a slight edge, he's just going to be able to take it 200 miles per hour. And so it's like those are the little things that I'm kind of looking for. I mean, when you look at the box score, you'd think that it was a blowout, and part of that is because of the muffed punt and little things like that, and you just want to see a little bit better execution week to week. The other thing that I wrote down was the amazing scramble inside 2 minutes for Stroud, and it was just in the first half, 3rd and 7, put them in what is that? Oh, then you had the penalty. And then it pushes them back. Yeah, it's just the reason why I wrote that down is, again, it continues to kind of paint the picture that I'd like to just see this team be more buttoned up, right? When you are a team with that's good as the Texans can be, right, and as top level, the more buttoned up you are, the more prepared and the more organized you are, just the better off you're going to be, right? It just feels like if the Texans don't achieve their main goals this season, it's going to be because they beat themselves, not because they weren't good enough, right? I think that'll be really the summary of if I had to pick and choose right now, it's like you have to give the Texans a grade right now after these 4 weeks, after these 4 games. It's what's your conclusion? It's like, this is a great team. This is a top team, top level coaching, well coached. And the only way they're really going to lose is if they beat themselves, right? If they lost to any of these other teams out there, playoff, Super Bowl, whatever it may be, I'm not going to say the Texans just weren't good enough. What are you going to do? You just weren't good enough. You just weren't ready. You're a little young. You're still growing. It's not the way I look at it. It's you would beat yourselves. And I reference the Chiefs all the time because they're the gold standard. And you can see right now that even though Patrick Mahomes is doing his best at trying to beat themselves, the team as a whole they don't beat themselves, right? Especially situationally. And they keep winning. I think it's actually pretty amazing when you really look at what they've been able to do, how they've been able to go 4-0 despite losing someone like seemingly every single game and important pieces, every single game. It's pretty outrageous. And it's not like they're only playing the Patriots and the Jags, right? Like they're playing better teams. And yet when push comes to shove, they don't beat themselves, right? They still have errors and mistakes like every team has, but they don't ever cross that threshold. And so that's where I want to see the Texans get to, right? I want to see them really take care of all the little things. When they take care of all these little things, it's just going to start to build this momentum, right, for this team. They're just too good of a team with too many awesome, great weapons for people to not regularly be talking about them, right? For the Texans to not be a regular, constant conversation in the mix. I feel like in a lot of ways the Texans had more hype last season, and CJ Stroud had more hype last season. Now it's like, where everyone's talking about Jaden Daniels. They're back on the Lamar Jackson train after, they beat the Bills, and it's like, and people have been talking about the Bills because those first 3 weeks of them starting off 3-0, right? Like, it's just, I want to see the Texans get back into the frame, right? Get back into the media, get back some attention, so we can kind of look at them from many more angles. And I think they will. I really, really do. And I'm excited for that. And I think CJ Stroud continues to evolve and grow as a quarterback, which is exciting as well. And I think this team can definitely, it feels like, and maybe I'm just putting this, out there, trying to speak it into existence, but it feels like the way how this team has been playing, they're going to catch their stride like week 10, week 11, week 12, and they're really going to start to be able to build some great momentum. Probably sooner than that. That's probably a little bit too deep, but they're really going to be able to like really kind of find their identity, find their game plans, find how they want to attack some of these things, be more buttoned up, and it's going to be at the perfect time for them to really take this into the playoffs, because this is obviously a playoff team. I mean, it would be, I don't know what would, I mean, outside of injuries, I don't know what would have to happen for them to not be a legitimate playoff team, especially with that division right now. So, yeah, I fully believe all good things will come to the Texans soon enough. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Houston Texans being 9th? According to Colin Cowherd. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.